Wow, that is comprehensive. Right? Comprehensive. And since it's about basketball and all of basketball, you know we're going to start with Michael Jordan. Jackie, in the hundreds of hours of interviews, what anecdotes about Michael Jordan surprised you?
Well, one of the ones I love the best is actually at the end of his career, believe it or not. So he's playing with Washington, and he and Doug Collins, the band, is back together. And he has a long streak of consecutive games. I forget how many. Rafe, you're my fact checker.
Years, I mean, decades, but the better part of a decade.
Right, double figures in games. So they're getting smoked in a game, and Doug's like, all right, this game's over, and doesn't really realize what's going on. Takes Jordan out, so the streak ends. And Jordan goes to him the next day and says, so do you think I can play anymore? And Doug Collins is like, well, of course I think you can play. And he goes, okay, I'm just checking. So the next game he says, you don't take me out till I tell you, okay? I'll give you. So he starts playing, starts going bonkers, scores 51 points. And Doug's like, look at him, he goes, no, not coming out, not coming out. And then the next game scores 40-something points. And to me, that's just the essence of Michael Jordan at the very, very end of his career. But that competitiveness in all the athletes I've ever covered, he still remains, to me, the most competitive, with Kobe a close second.
I agree, and unfortunately for me, I got a chance to play against Michael as a member of the Bulls and of the Wizards. And the fascinating thing now, in the era of resting healthy players, he actually played all 82 games as a 40-year-old playing in Washington. People underestimate that fact. But Isaiah Thomas, and I'm a fellow Detroiter, I'm from Detroit, says you can't tell the Michael Jordan story without talking about the story of the Bad Boys. What do you think about that?
I understand where Isaiah's coming from, and it's duly noted in the book. And what Isaiah's beef is, and he talks about it in the book, is that everybody wants to go from the 80s Celtics right to the Bulls, the 90s Bulls. And there's those 2 years where not only did the Pistons win the championship, they should, as you know, they should have gone to the finals in '87.
Right.
But we won't.
Burfield the ball underneath the DJ.
We're not going to bring that up in front of Isaiah.
There's a full chapter in the book about that, if I remember correctly.
There is, and so I do understand. What I liked about Isaiah, and I hadn't really thought about it, if I'm honest, and I probably should have, because I was immersed in that. I covered those teams, was the idea of the Detroit being this small market, champion slayers. And, I covered all those Celtics, Pistons games and the Pistons Lakers. And he's right. They beat some of the greatest teams in the history of the sport. And he's also right that they get snuck through the cracks. Part of that is because they were so darn unlikable.
Correct.
Bad
boys.
Bad boys, and they reveled in that. I tell you a quick story about Dennis Rodman, one of the bad boys. Orlando, 1991, he's an all-star. It's the day before, and they are announcing who's going to play in the game the next day. They boo Rodman. He's looking at me, tears in his eyes. Why are they booing me? He's wearing jeans and sneakers. He's just like you then, Jacoby. He was just a kid, a regular kid, And somewhere along the way, he decided, if I can't beat the bad boy thing, I'm going to embrace it. Oh. And that's when he became the Dennis Rodman everybody else
Piercings,
knows today.
tats, blonde hair.
He used to just be a kid from Oklahoma.
Yes, he was.
That wanted to play ball.
Let me ask you, Jalen, what is it about guys who from Detroit, played in Detroit, that tend to have a little more of an edge with Michael Jordan than everyone else? Because one of the other great stories from the book, early in Jordan's career, George the Iceman Gervin, a Detroit native, gets traded to the Bulls. And that's the year that Jordan spent most of the year out with his foot injured. But Gervin tells a story about how, they just didn't get along because the Bulls got rid of Rod Higgins, who was one of Jordan's best friends at the time, in order to make that trade. And he basically ends up calling Michael Jordan a punk on camera in the book. Jordan, so where's that?
You alluded to it, Jack. It's a competitive jealousy. Like, Detroit is a blue-collar town. And so we see the glamour of Los Angeles and everybody enamored with Hollywood and the great dynasties that the Celtics have. Right. So everybody's looking like, what about us? So we're one of the only places, along with Indiana, that still will boo Michael Jordan. Like, we weren't allowed to rock his shoes, not that we could afford them, but, we didn't wear his shoes because the rivalry was that intense against a great player like Michael Jordan.
So, Rafe, when reading this book, there was one thing that stuck out to me, and I was like, I need to talk to them about this. And it is an anecdote that Ahmad Rashad tells about what Michael Jordan said about the current crop of players. Please explain, Mr. Bartholomew.
Well, Ahmad Rashad is talking, he tells a lot, because the book does not get Michael Jordan in his own words, but everyone.
Ahmad's the next
right.
Exactly. If you don't know, you're watching Ahmad Rashad,
the wingman extraordinaire, as well as a great NFL player and all this other stuff. But So he's telling a story about one time he's next to Michael, and people are asking him, "Hey, who's really better? You know, Kobe or LeBron? You or LeBron?" And he's like, "Or who's better? Kobe or LeBron?" He's like, "You know, the best guy right now, I think it is Kevin Durant." Now,
Kevin Durant. Michael Jordan.
Now. The difference here is these interviews are a couple of years old. That interview with Ahmad Rashad, I believe, would have been done before 2016 when LeBron really does solidify that legacy by beating the Warriors.
Right.
But
you could still argue that Durant's kind of on a pretty good string himself here.
Sure.
Right?
No doubt.
Sure.
And Durant's the kind of player that Jordan would appreciate, right?
Yes.
Wiry, athletic, can pull up, shoot threes, efficient. You know, that's a big thing.
Well, knowing Michael Jordan's competitiveness, Jalen, I'm going to ask you this. Does he say that because he doesn't want to fix his lips and say the words LeBron James? That's what it
He
seems like to me.
understands that LeBron's wearing 23. He's doing the powder toss. He's following in my footsteps. But at the same time, when people ask him about challenging who's the best, he kind of denying it. So I'm going to deny him every chance I get. I felt like he did that against Kobe for a while too. And then he realized that for whatever reasons, it wasn't going to take place like that.
But it was interesting. He was one of Kobe's mentors, and he spent a lot of time with Kobe. I think he started to really like Kobe when he realized nobody was talking about Kobe as
Correct.
Right?
So, I mean, obviously we're going to cover the Larry and Magic and some of the beginnings of the league and all of that. But it's the little stories that I love so much. And there's one that really stuck out to me about Calvin Murphy, Houston Rockets great. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, Jackie.
So it turns out Calvin Murphy was, if there is such a thing, a champion baton twirler.
Seriously,
a champion baton twirler. And went all over
Not
the
the
country.
most masculine of hobbies.
No, but very important to Calvin Murphy. Like, very important. Like, he was going to do half times at games up in Buffalo. I mean, he went to Niagara, as you guys know. This was, next to basketball, probably his biggest passion, right?
It was, and he, in his interviews, he actually talks about how being a baton twirler made him tougher, because one of the other things of Calvin Murphy's legacy is, as a little man, he says he was undefeated in NBA fights during his day.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
And
he's a tough.
Oh, he wouldn't mess with him.
I mean, they say Al Attles
Check it out.
and
Look at the
Calvin
pants.
Murphy are the two toughest little men who may have ever, at least in terms of fisticuffs.
That's hand-eye, right? That's
That
hand-eye coordination. That's dexterity. Those
I
are
am
basketball
absolutely
skills.
impressed by that. Absolutely impressed
My
by
sister
that.
was a baton twirler. I slept through many a competition when I was a kid. I can tell you, none of them were like Calvin Murphy.
Correct. And you have extensive knowledge of everything that has taken place in the league, but you have the ultimate pulse on the Boston Celtics. And in this book, you guys talk about a story where Red Auerbach is helping John Havlicek with his conditioning.
Oh, yeah. So here's the funny thing about the Celtics. Satch Sanders shows up, and he's like, man, these guys can run up and down all day. I better get in good shape. And then the first game, they go in at halftime, and they're all smoking. Like chain smoking, right? And he's like, what's this about? And Havlicek is the only one that isn't smoking. So Satch is like, I guess I better start smoking. So Heinsohn was a chain smoker. And so Red says to him, hey, Tommy, you got to quit smoking, man. You're too winded in the games. I need you to quit smoking. So Tommy quits smoking, gains 25 pounds because he starts eating. And then Red's like, Tommy, forget what I said. Quit eating and start smoking again.
And they say that Satch said that they used to sit they'd move up the bench next to Red whenever Heinsohn was in the game because they knew he was going to get mad that when Heinsohn starts blowing wind, and they're like, all right, Satch, get in there.
So whoever was sitting next to Red, he would just grab him and he'd go in the game.
And
So they'd all
meanwhile,
be
Red's
fighting.
smoking the whole time during the game as
Oh,
well.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys so much. We'll be back with more with Jackie and Rafe and Dan Clores, who are the authors of Basketball: A Love Story. We're going to